What would happen if the woman who was thrown out of the showroom turned out to be the owner of the entire dealership chain? Have you ever walked into a luxurious space only to feel, with every glance and every word, that you were being pushed aside just because you didn't look like someone with money? Mira Ellison had, and that moment was nothing new to her. She stepped through the crystal-clear glass doors of Hamilton Auto Elite, a luxury car showroom recently acquired by Ellison Motors, the very company she led. Dressed so simply that one might look twice to figure out whether she was a customer or someone applying for a job. A faded t-shirt, worn-out jeans, and sneakers with scuffed heels, Mira looked like anyone searching for an affordable car. Nothing more. But within a few steps inside, she immediately sensed something was off. Not from the gleaming cars displayed like works of art, but from the behavior of the people inside. A man in his 40s, slicked back hair, expensive suit, and the confident stride of someone used to being obeyed, approached her. He didn't introduce himself, didn't say hello. Instead, with narrowed eyes and a voice sharp enough to cut through the silence, he said, "You're not welcome here. Call security." Not a single question asked, not a moment spared to understand why Mira was there. The man, Rex Morgan, the branch manager, had already made his judgment, and he made it loud and clear. She needed to leave. The incident happened so quickly that a few customers browsing the cars paused and looked up. They didn't know exactly what was happening, but they could sense something was wrong. Mira, the woman being publicly humiliated, didn't flinch. Her eyes didn't scream or plead, but carried a calm, icy certainty that made people uneasy. She didn't say much, just one line. "You have no idea what you've just done." And what made the entire showroom shiver wasn't her tone, but the absolute certainty behind those little words. This woman wasn't there to buy a car. She was there to see the truth, and in that first look, she saw everything she needed to know. Her name is Mira Ellison, 42 years old, bronze-toned skin, sharp eyes, and a deep, commanding voice. She is no stranger to the world of luxury cars. Once a college student rejected from an internship simply because she didn't fit the brand image, Mira went on to build an empire. Ellison Motors, a company now owning more than 14 high-end showrooms across the state of California. And Hamilton Auto Elite, the place where she had just been so harshly disrespected, was the newest acquisition in her expansion strategy. When her legal team finalized the transfer of control over Hamilton 11 days ago, Mira didn't hold a press conference or have her name placed on the building. She chose silence. For 11 days, she quietly listened to the whispers, customers of color being ignored, single women being questioned about their finances, people not dressed up to standard being subtly turned away. No formal complaints, no written reports, just fragmented stories. But they echoed the very past she once lived. For Mira, the most damaging truths are not found in spreadsheets or internal audits. To face them, she needed a truth that hadn't been polished in advance. No announcement, no entourage, no nameplate reading Chief Executive Officer. She wanted to see how her employees, or more precisely, the people who now represented her brand and her values, would treat a stranger. It wasn't a rash decision. Mira had thought it through, prepared herself, and understood that she might be underestimated. What she hadn't expected was just how unapologetically blatant the contempt would be. Rex Morgan didn't care who she was, because he believed he could see everything he needed in one glance and a faded t-shirt. And that alone confirmed for Mira that she wasn't just acquiring a showroom. She was holding in her hands a disease rotting from within. Early in the morning, while the city still slumbered beneath a veil of mist, Mira Ellison stood before the mirror in her bedroom, looking into the reflection staring back at her. It was no longer the image of a powerful CEO in an expensive blazer with perfectly styled hair. Today, she was returning to the version of herself from 19 years ago. An unknown young woman who once knocked on the doors of countless showrooms, hoping for a chance to sell cars. Mira opened the hidden wardrobe door in the corner, where she kept a few old garments as a quiet reminder of her journey. A faded grey t-shirt, frayed jeans at the knees, and a pair of worn-out sneakers that had carried her through college. As she put them on, Mira hardly recognized herself. Not because of how she looked, but because of the feeling of being stripped of every symbol of success. She left her penthouse in downtown Los Angeles without a designer handbag or any VIP privileges. Instead, she took the keys to a 2010 Toyota Corolla, a car she had kept as a memento from her early startup days. It wasn't just a vehicle, it was a message. When Mira drove into the Hamilton Auto Elite parking lot, there was no roaring engine to draw attention, no gleaming sport rims or VIP plates to prompt employees to rush to greet her. She stepped out of the car dressed in a way so ordinary it was easy to overlook her, exactly as she intended. Just hours earlier, Mira had received a strange message. If you really show up, be prepared. At Hamilton, appearance matters more than money. It had no name, no origin, but carried a pointed warning. Mira didn't share it with anyone. She hadn't come to confront. She came to observe. Each of her footsteps on the marble showroom floor was light, yet her heart felt heavy. None of the people there knew that the modest woman before them owned the entire system, that she held the power to alter every one of their lives with a single decision. Today, Mira didn't want to be welcomed. She needed to be dismissed, underestimated, pushed aside, so she could see clearly what was silently corroding what she had spent a lifetime building. And only by witnessing the truth in the shadows could she begin to restore the light. The moment Mira stepped through the glass doors of Hamilton Auto Elite, she felt a chill creep through the air. The showroom was brightly lit, with Lamborghinis, Bentleys, and BMWs displayed like treasures, but not a single welcoming glance was directed her way. 3 salesmen nearby were enthusiastically courting well-dressed customers, while she, a woman in a faded t-shirt and worn shoes, was completely ignored. Mira stood there for 3 full minutes, long enough that any excuse like, "we didn't notice," became meaningless. No one offered assistance. No one nodded. No one even tried to hide their indifference. She walked to the reception desk, where a blonde girl, clearly chosen more for her appearance than her qualifications, was typing on her keyboard while chewing gum. Mira stood in front of her for nearly a minute, and only when she let out a soft cough did the girl reluctantly look up. Her first glance was judgment, the second, contempt. No greeting, no smile, just a line laced with sugary malice. "If you're here to apply for a job, we take applications online." Mira calmly replied, "I'd like to see your sedan lineup." The girl, whose name tag read Crystal, blinked and looked Mira up and down, her mocking tone unmistakable. "You sure? The cheapest car here is 50 grand. There are plenty of used car lots that might be a better fit." Mira's expression did not change, but inside, every word was cutting like a blade. This wasn't just rudeness. This was systemic bias. Crystal never asked if Mira needed help, never introduced a model, never gave her the chance to be a customer. All she did was diminish a stranger's worth based on a worn shirt and the color of her skin. And Mira knew if she turned around and walked away now, nothing would change. But she hadn't come to walk away. She had come to uproot the problem. And this was just the beginning. Crystal probably thought she was handling the situation like a professional, until Rex Morgan stepped out from the office in the back, his face lighting up at the sight of someone who clearly didn't look like a potential customer standing near the display cars. He didn't need to ask what had happened. With just a glance, Rex had already made up his mind. "What's going on?" he asked, but he didn't look at Mira. He looked directly at Crystal, as if she were the authority in this situation. Crystal jumped in eagerly. "She keeps insisting on seeing the cars. I told her nothing here is under 50 grand. Rex didn't bother to verify a thing. He walked over to Mira, flashing a fake smile. "Ma'am, I believe this is a misunderstanding. This is a luxury showroom, and we only assist clients with real purchasing intent. Have you prepared your financial documents? I'll need to see 3 forms of ID and a bank statement." Mira tilted her head slightly. "I just wanted to look at the cars." But Rex was already raising his hand to call security. A large man named Doug stepped forward, his expression guarded as if Mira were a security threat. At that exact moment, a white man in a tailored suit walked through the door. Everything changed instantly. Crystal rushed to the front desk with a bright, sugary smile. "Hello, sir. How may I assist you today?" Another sales associate quickly appeared, offering coffee, inviting him to sit inside the car, keys already in hand. In less than 30 seconds, the new guest was offered a test drive in the very BMW Mira had asked to see, without being asked for a single document. Mira watched the scene in silence. She said nothing. But in her eyes, a storm had already begun to brew. And when Doug placed his hand on her arm to escort her out, Mira quietly removed his grip. "I'll walk myself out, but you'll remember this encounter." And indeed, they were about to remember it for the rest of their lives. 1 hour later, as the sun rose higher and the luxury cars inside the showroom continued to gleam under the lights like jewels on display, the automatic glass doors of Hamilton Auto Elite opened once again. But this time, the woman who walked in was no longer dressed in a faded t-shirt, old jeans and worn sneakers. Instead, she was a vision entirely transformed. Mira Ellison in a perfectly tailored black suit, patent leather heels clicking confidently with each step, eyes shielded by oversized sunglasses, and a white gold watch catching the light with an unmistakable brilliance. She didn't say a word. She simply walked in with a presence so commanding, the entire showroom seemed to hold its breath. Every gaze followed her, from Crystal at the front desk to the 2 salesmen deep in conversation with other clients. They didn't recognize Mira, but it wasn't her outfit that made them uneasy. It was the aura of power radiating from every step and every glance. When Rex Morgan emerged and saw Mira, he didn't bother to hide his confusion. He squinted as if trying to identify the woman before him. "Excuse me, ma'am, the showroom is a bit busy right now. If you don't have an appointment," Mira interrupted, her voice soft but absolute. "I'd like to speak with your regional director. Tell him Ellison is here." That name hit the air like a slap. Rex froze. That name, it was familiar, unmistakably so. And then his eyes widened with panic as the pieces began falling into place. At that very moment, a figure rushed in through the side door. Arthur Kane, the regional director, his face drenched in sweat, tie askew, shoes hastily laced. He nearly sprinted toward Mira, his expression panicked, breath short. "Ms. Ellison, I had no idea." Mira removed her sunglasses, locking eyes with him. "You knew enough," she replied. That brief statement sliced through the air like a blade, plunging the showroom into a charged silence. Rex stammered, "Wait, Ellison, you're... But it was too late. Every snur, every insult, every cold stare from just an hour earlier was now returning like a storm. And Mira, at that moment, was no longer a woman waiting to be acknowledged. She was the storm itself. The atmosphere inside the showroom was now as silent as a courtroom awaiting its verdict. Every employee stood frozen in place, their eyes filled with confusion and fear as they began to realize that the woman standing before them was not a difficult customer, but the one who held the power to decide the fate of the entire operation. Mira Ellison pulled a small business card from her jacket pocket and placed it gently on the front desk in front of Rex Morgan. That soft sound echoed like a gavel hitting a judge's bench. The card carried only a few lines. Mira Ellison, Chief Executive Officer, Ellison Motors. Crystal, standing behind the desk, swallowed hard, her face shifting from pale to nearly ghost white. She couldn't bring herself to look Mira in the eye. Rex was speechless, lips pressed together as if trying to hold back a futile excuse. Arthur Kane stepped back, sweat beading across his forehead, his trembling hand pulling out a tissue from his pocket, but failing to wipe a single drop. Mira raised her head and looked directly at Rex. "This morning, I requested to see a BMW model. I still want to see it." Rex forced a crooked smile, his voice distorted. "Ms. Ellison, given the events this morning, I'm afraid," Mira cut him off. "You're afraid of what? That I'm not qualified? Or that I didn't wear the right color suit to be treated with basic decency in a showroom I own?" Rex stammered, unable to find a response. Mira turned to Arthur, her voice low but sharp as steel. "I want you to witness firsthand the customer service protocols at this facility. I want you to observe how the staff behaves when they believe someone holds no power." Arthur lowered his head, silent. Rex tried to salvage the moment, his voice shaking. "If I had known you were the CEO, I would have treated you differently." Mira tilted her head, her gaze razor-sharp. "That's exactly the problem. Your respect is only for those you believe are important. Everyone else, you mock, humiliate, and throw out with the help of your security staff." A single deep breath escaped Mira before she spoke again, her tone unwavering. "Protocol 7, effective immediately." She didn't need to explain further. Arthur understood, and everyone in the showroom now knew. No one would simply get a warning today. This was a purge, one that began from the highest point of authority, slicing deep into the roots of the hypocrisy that had quietly rotted in the shadows for far too long. The moment the words Protocol 7 left Mira Ellison's lips, all remaining patience within her left with them. There was no shouting, no threats, only the steely stillness of a leader who had just made the decision to eliminate a quiet sickness that had been corroding her organization from within. Rex Morgan stood frozen like a statue, his face flushing red before turning pale. He tried to speak, but no sound came out. Mira no longer looked at him. Instead, she turned to Arthur Kane and said, "Terminate Rex Morgan, effective immediately." Arthur nodded, his eyes lowered as though he too were receiving a silent verdict hanging over his head. Rex stammered in desperation, "Ms. Ellison, I've served in this industry for 17 years. I was only following protocol." Mira didn't turn around, but her voice rang out clearly. "You weren't following protocol. You were following prejudice, and today it has swallowed you whole." Crystal, still behind the reception desk, now realized the full weight of what was crashing down around her. She tried to avoid Mira's gaze, but it was impossible. "Crystal," Mira called her name with a tone as soft as air, but heavy as stone. "You disrespected a customer from the very first glance. No further evidence is required. You will also leave today." The girl nodded, trembling, tears beginning to spill, but no one had the patience left to comfort her. Doug, the heavy-set security guard who had once forcibly escorted Mira out of the showroom, stepped forward, fists clenched. Mira didn't even look at him. She simply said to Arthur, "Have Doug's security credentials reviewed. What happened this morning went far beyond the bounds of any acceptable conduct." There were no raised voices, only cold yet fair decisions delivered by someone who understood that for any organization to endure, ethics must be its foundation, not revenue, not flashy branding. But Mira didn't stop at firings. She announced that very morning that the entire Ellison Motors network would undergo a mandatory retraining on conduct standards, fairness in service, and unbiased customer interaction. A special task force would be formed, visiting every showroom under the guise of mystery clients to assess whether real change was taking root. And finally, Mira ended with a single statement that every employee at Hamilton Auto Elite would remember for the rest of their careers. "We don't just sell cars, we create experiences, and in those experiences, there is no place for prejudice." As Mira Ellison walked away from the showroom, the storm of anger had begun to settle, but a quiet, persistent disappointment still stirred within her. Through the haze of the tinted glass, she suddenly caught sight of a familiar face. It was Kayla, the young black woman Mira had noticed earlier in the parking lot, the one who had stepped into Hamilton Auto Elite with a polished appearance and eyes filled with hope, only to be met with cold indifference by the very people who had just been dismissed. Kayla stood frozen, financial documents clutched in her hands, her eyes flickering between the urge to walk away and the faint hope of still being seen. Mira stopped. She could not leave knowing that someone like Kayla, a genuine customer, fully capable and longing for her dream car, had become collateral damage in a system Mira once believed to be flawless. She turned back, walking slowly toward Kayla, and spoke gently. "What model are you looking for?" Kayla looked up, startled at first, then guarded, as if uncertain whether this kindness could be real. Mira smiled, her gaze warmer than it had been all day. Today, the people who deserved to be exposed showed their true colors. But you deserve to be treated like a valued guest from the very beginning. Then she gestured toward the glossy black BMW displayed in the center of the showroom, the very same car both she and Kayla had once been denied access to. "If you still want it," she said softly, "let me give you a gift." Not a gift in the form of charity or reparation, but a gesture of restoration, of trust, of dignity, of what business and life ought to stand for. Mira ordered an immediate special discount for Kayla, waived all service fees, granted a lifetime warranty, and enclosed a handwritten apology, not from the legal department, but from herself, the CEO of Ellison Motors. Kayla's eyes welled up, her voice trembling as she replied, "I didn't think something like this could happen." Mira placed a hand on her shoulder and said, "I used to be you, and if no one stands up for us, sometimes we have to be the first to do it for someone else." She did not need thanks, but in the look Kayla gave her as she received the keys to her new car, Mira knew she had done the right thing. Not just the right thing as a CEO, but as a human being. A woman once rejected who now chose to offer a chance. In the world of business, a name card does not define a person. It is how you treat someone, without one, that truly reveals who you are. Mira Ellison did not just punish what was wrong. She rebuilt an entire company culture founded on respect and fairness. If you believe that every customer deserves to be treated with dignity, like this video, subscribe so you never miss stories that inspire, and leave a comment with the phrase "respect first" to help spread this powerful message.